Welcome back, number 25, Kevin Stevens.
We're all gonna have choices in life. 28 years old, never did a drug in my life. Someone handed me something. So one 30-second decision I made changed the past of my life. For the next 24 years, my life went like this. We're on TV now, so it's kind of
scary.
You know, our radio and our podcast can see on TV, which is kind of new to us. So painfully, like I sat with you guys for a long time, guys, and sat there and say it's never going to be me. You know, now I'm sitting here talking to you guys because it was me. I know how those people feel because I've been in those situations where I've been stuck, and when you're in it, you can't see it. It's very hard. It's a very difficult thing, addiction and substance abuse, and people need help. And we have to get out there and kind of educate people and try to do the best we can to help them. Welcome to Crosscheck. I am Kevin Stevens, and got another great show. We got 3 great guests today, and we're going to start with one of my buddies here, Paulie V. He's going to share his little story, or big story, about addiction and how he got sober and how he's doing now. So I'll turn it over to my buddy Andy, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, as you suggested, as you mentioned, we do have a great show planned for today. And before we meet our guests, we got to meet the rest of the panel. Obviously, you're filling in today.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, the Miracle Man.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll hear from you in a second. You and Alex Bezanson, the mayor of Abington, the unofficial mayor of Abington.
I thought I was the icon.
You are an icon, and you're also a manager of the Huggy Bears.
The Huggy Bears softball team. Hug Foundation had our softball tournament over the weekend with our celebrity friends, and we raised some good money for the Hug Foundation.
And you're also with the Substance Abuse?
And the Abington Substance Awareness Coalition,
okay.
Yes.
All right, well, so let's get started with the show. And, we went to Southie a week and a half ago. Kevin did a speaking appearance there. And our friend, Dr. Mike Hamrock from St. Elizabeth's Hospital was there. And he gave us some really interesting statistics, specifically around THC count in marijuana. And, one of the discussions that we had was that this is not your father's marijuana these days. And in fact, that marijuana has about 50% THC, and some examples are even 80%. So we asked Dr. Hamrock to send us some information. And did you guys know that 19.8% of high schoolers used marijuana within the past month? And half of illicit drug users started with marijuana. And they're saying more early and frequent use slows cognitive function and lower IQ scores. And they said it's 4 times the risk of developing psychosis. So my question to you, Kevin, is do you think we should be devoting more time to educating kids and parents about the dangers of today's marijuana? Do you think enough?
Yeah, I do. Obviously it's crazy out there right now. I don't know why. It can be used in different ways, I guess, that for positive ways, for pain, for certain things. But I don't think these kids are in pain that are using all this marijuana. I think it's, they use it because they like it, and they use it the way they like it feel. And that's what I did when I used drugs. I used drugs because I like the way they make me feel.
Right.
This is kind of the same thing. They're just kind of starting off a little, they think the marijuana, for me, anything you put in the brain, it can make you think differently. You're not thinking the way you're supposed to think. It's dangerous. And, you see, I read in the paper that 70% of the people using marijuana driving, it's not a great thing. I don't think so. I don't know. I think there's got to be a little more done about it because, it's going to lead to other things. That's just what the nature of this beast is, right? You don't start off diving into a bunch of heroin.
Right.
You start off and you build up progression to addiction, right?
Exactly. And in fact, they say that 17% of kids develop dependence when they start at a young age. So this is a really real issue. What do you guys think? What do you think, Alex?
Well, I think with the legalization of recreational marijuana, people have the misconception that it's safe, and I think a lot of people think that if the government legalizes something, then it's okay to use. And it's okay to use if you're an adult over 21. And we've discussed this before. Your brain isn't fully developed until you're close to 21 years old. And I think the earlier kids are using this, the worse it's going to be. I think we're going to see a big problem with this 10 years down the road.
Oh, for sure, because it does,
Right.
you know, the statistics are.
And the potency of it.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a big problem.
What do you think, Miracle Man?
I believe this whole vape thing is playing a part in it too. A lot of these kids with the vapes, they're having problems in schools with the vape, and now we're finding out that they're putting the marijuana liquid into the vapes. So that and we're hearing stories about the fentanyl going into the vapes. And
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, the marijuana thing, absolutely a gateway drug. And a young kid like. Smoking a vape, they're passing them around, a vape around, and if there's marijuana, it's the start of it right there.
Right, and that's kind of what Dr. Hamrock was talking about from St. Elizabeth. He was like, this is a very serious thing, and hopefully we can get that word out to parents and kids that this is a big problem. And
I think that's the other problem. The parents now can buy it legally or grow it in their own house and possess it, and kids are going to get it. Kids have always gotten into the alcohol, the parents, and fill the bottle of vodka with water.
Right.
So the parents don't. The same thing's going to happen here. Because it's legal, like I said, people think it's okay, and it's not okay for the kids to be using it.
Right.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like Alex said, parents think that this thing get legalized, so let the kids smoke. They're not drinking, right? They're
Right.
not 21 yet. They're not out there drinking and driving. But it's just, like I say, it's just too much. I don't get how we just keep pushing this marijuana thing. I don't know. For me, it's there has to be some kind of limit to it.
Absolutely. So actually, our next guest is someone who can really speak to this. She works with a lot of the schools. Her name is Kelly Maycomer, and she's with the Plymouth County Youth Development Collaborative. So we're going to hear from her right after this short break. We'll be right back on Crosscheck. Welcome back to Crosscheck. I'm Andy Bernstein here with two-time Stanley Cup champion, returning from Erie, Pennsylvania. The great Erie. You go to all the beautiful places, don't you?
Yep.
Winnipeg, Erie, Buffalo.
Problems everywhere, Andy. We can't live in your little Mansfield world.
Right?
Yeah.
And what are you laughing at?
I'm just laughing. I'm allowed to laugh.
Alyssa Horton,
right.
Alyssa Horton, recovery specialist,
That's me.
and an Abington native.
Yes.
Yes.
And I still can't manage to be on time today.
Wow.
I know. That's all right. That's all right. We're
Well,
glad you're
yeah,
here.
I'm not
glad
actually
you
from.
are
I'm a
here.
New York native. But
Oh, well, look
From
at that.
Strong Island,
From Strong Island, from Long Island. Please, nobody hate me for that.
right? Jets fan.
Nope. Didn't like sports in New York.
Oh, now you're here, and now
Yeah,
you're,
I'm marrying a Massachusetts man. Please
Oh,
do
okay.
not break up my wedding before it happens.
No. All right. So joining us is a longtime friend of the show, Kelly Maycomer, who is the program coordinator for the Plymouth County Youth Development Collaborative, and we also have Marielle,
Yes.
who is
Marielle Paul,
Marielle Paul,
the
who-
program coordinator through High Point for the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition.
All right.
.com.
So she works in Middleborough, Carver, and Plymouth.
Got it. Okay. So
Big area.
A lot of people that cover
A lot of people.
welcome to our TV world,
Thank you for having me.
our video podcast, if
Yes,
you will.
This is exciting.
It is exciting. It's a big production here. It is. All right. So let's we talked about marijuana in the opening segment.
Yes.
I wanted to get your quick reaction on some of the statistics that Dr. Hamrock actually mentioned.
So, again, my name's Kelly Maycumber. I coordinate the Plymouth Youth Development Collaborative. So it's actually only Plymouth, Massachusetts that I work in. But I work through a federal grant called Drug Free Communities, and I work for the public school district. So I'm able to work with a lot of youth all over the town. But something that we've really, noticed lately in our prevention work, we've surveyed a lot of kids, is the dramatic increase in use between middle school and high school. So as prevention specialists, kind of looking at, when does use start and trying to get that prevention and education in there before that even happens. So while like almost 26%, so I think it's 25.9% of high school age youth are reporting use in the past 30 days of marijuana, we only have about 1.9% of middle school students that are admitting to past 30-day use. And we know those numbers, might not be 100% accurate, but that's what our data is telling us. So that's kind of what we're going with. Age of onset is around 11 to 13 for first-time use of any substance.
So what would be your suggestion would it be to start in the middle school? So when, obviously if we start in the high school, sometimes the prevention's already gone, right?
Yeah, so sometimes I get raised eyebrows for this, but I would say, preferably to start in elementary school would be ideal. And it's not necessarily talking about, IV heroin use in elementary school. It's talking about what does your healthy body look like? What does your healthy brain look like? What are things that might put your brain and body at risk? And really talking about health in general and really pushing that health education that kind of falls into the conversation about specific substances as they get to middle and high, but kind of making that a thing earlier on for kids and especially for parents, because those are going to be the people that have those conversations with young people.
And I think, everybody thinks that this marijuana is not bad for them. It's kind of like, not drinking. Let's just try to smoke marijuana. It's not really that bad. Everybody's doing it. It's kind of one of those things that, kind of caught on. It just kind of catches on and people just do it. And there's so many different ways now to smoke marijuana. Then you get the little things you can eat, the little gummies.
I'm in the
Lollipops.
Yeah, they
put it in everything.
Yeah, they make it so easy for everybody. And I think everybody's kind of has that false picture that this is okay.
The market has just expanded so much with products since legalization. So I think a lot of it is just educating in general, like knowing things like after, between 1 and 3 hours of use, an edible might kick in. So you might have a young person that takes an edible, doesn't feel anything in 20 minutes and takes 3 more, right? And we're seeing a lot of these cases of just like lack of education and really serious results happening because of it, including hospitalization for cannabis use, which is concerning, So just getting that education out there and hoping that kids, regardless of the decisions they're gonna make safe and smarter decisions is kind of our goal, just the education piece.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I don't think parents understand the our age group. I'm wondering, not you, but but our age group as far as we were in college and we would smoke pot.
Yeah, but it's a lot different than that generation's to now.
When you're talking about the flower, it's a lot less. So usually when you're talking about like rolling a joint or a blunt with flower or cannabis flower, you're talking about 16 to 25% THC, which is going to be the psychoactive part that gets you high. Whereas, if we're talking about these oils, it's like anywhere between 50 and 90% THC, which is, again, that psychoactive part, versus CBD, which is going to be the part that kind of has relaxation properties used to treat anxiety, PTSD, things like that. So they're definitely getting a different product than, the marijuana of the past.
Right. And, with the collaborative, what are some of the things that you do with this collaborative and how long has it been in existence?
Yeah. So PYDC has been around since 2004, but it wasn't until we got the SAPSI grant and then we got DFC funding in 2017 that we've really been able to push initiatives and prevention initiatives that are really making a difference, I hope. So a lot of what we do is pushing education. So setting up resource tables, getting to events that are already happening, going to open houses to meet the coaches' nights, anywhere we can get in and just pushing information to parents and community members. And then in addition to that, bringing in speakers. So collaborating with different organizations to bring in education, like in trying to always be open-minded about unique, new, out-of-the-box ways to get the education out there.
Yeah, it's what I was thinking the same thing. It's just kind of like the opiates, the same type of thing. We it's about prevention, it's about education, because just like anything, everything's so easy to get started on, and once you get started, especially with the opiates, the marijuana is a little bit different, but it seems like people just think they can do it forever. And then the opiates is kind of the same thing. Once you get started, you're stuck, right? And it's kind of like you get that in your mindset that you can do all this stuff. And I think that's the most prevention of all these drugs is, you need to know what the outcome's going to be when you just start doing this stuff all the time. I don't care if it's marijuana, pain pills, heroin, whatever it is.
Yep.
There's no good end result, right?
And just also thinking about in kids, if we can identify reasons for use, so why kids are using substances, then we can think about alternative coping skills for kids that, might be struggling. And maybe some of it is just, to experiment and to get high and to have fun. But a lot of it is, self-medicating for different issues, and whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's, trauma. We've been looking a lot at the effect of trauma on learning and adverse childhood experiences and how those ACEs play a part. So I think a lot of it is, digging deep, and it might not always be, the prettiest conversations. It might not always be fun work, but it's a lot of important work, and just getting to that root so we can try to, have an impact on the issue.
How do you engage parents?
That's a great question. So we're always trying to engage parents. And, there's a million different things going on in lives of children and in their lives personally. So we know parents and community members and, even people that are raising young people. So grandparents, aunts, uncles have lots of places to be. So when we have events, if our attendance isn't high, we try to take into consideration that, they're busy. But at the same time, if we can match, our education and information to places where parents might already be, whether that's a sporting event or, a program that's already well attended. Something in Plymouth, we have the Waterfront Festival. It reaches thousands of people every summer. Getting the information to where people are going to be already is definitely important, but definitely just keeping them in the know and trying to get the most relevant fact-based information, and really sitting in a place where it's not so much, don't do this or don't do that, but this is the information, this is the education. We want you to be in the know so we keep kids safe. And that's kind of our whole mantra, is just keeping kids safe.
Because that'll
and
produce
healthy.
them asking the right kind of questions.
Exactly.
Like, what do I say? How do I say this? But it's more on their terms, and they can gather, which is more approachable, I would think.
For sure.
For families, absolutely.
And I think it's important that, like you said, you get out there in the groups of people, because a lot of parents, they don't want to believe it's their kid, right? So, but if you can get the people where they're at, like, so, some of these people won't go and listen to me speak about opiates because they don't think it's going to be. But if there's a group of people where you can be a voice, and people have to listen, they might not be there to listen to you or me, but they listen and they hear things, and I think that's the most important thing that you guys are doing too, is just getting out there in front of the people.
Definitely.
How are you guys addressing the vaping problem in school?
Oh, wow.
Is that a
quickly?
curveball?
So we know that vaping is a huge issue amongst not just high school, but middle school age. We've even had some, issues around elementary school age kids using vapes. Not necessarily THC in the vape, but e-juice or vape juice, which is going to be a high percentage of nicotine normally. How we're addressing it is, one, obviously, like I've said a million times, educating, giving them information on how the vapes are going to impact their brains, their bodies. But in addition to that, thinking about consequences a little differently. So adding an educational component to a consequence. So rather than, a young person getting in trouble for vaping and then being sent home for the next 10 days to sit on their couch and most likely vape some more, keeping them maybe for part of that and doing education. Marielle and I have had some good conversations with young people that have gotten in trouble for vaping, and kind of teaching them, this is just the information we have. This is how it might impact you. So definitely adding that educational component. And we're just always trying to stay outside of the box and how we're addressing it. But honestly, it's pretty hard. With, cigarettes, you can put them out. You don't put vapes out. You can vape them anywhere. Your teeth don't turn yellow. Your breath doesn't smell bad. Like, there are things that were major headlines in the prevention of regular cigarettes or traditional cigarettes that we just can't use with vaping. So it's really, having facts and data and how this is impacting people, but there's not a lot of longitudinal data to show how it's impacting them.
Have you looked into the popcorn lung? Have you talked to them about that?
About what? What's the
some of the ingredients, I guess, in the juices are actually were originally from when they used to manufacture popcorn in the bag. And what happened is a lot of the workers were getting what they called popcorn lung, which was a form of lung cancer that's untreatable.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
So
yep. That's what the CEO of the last company I worked for used to hand out that pamphlet for all of our people. We weren't trying to enforce anybody. We're just like, hey, you might want to know that, you can read up on smoking cigarettes. You're going to get all forms of tongue, lung, all of that. You lose your teeth, all these things. But vaping seems so innocent, but most people have a cancer that's untreatable. And they can't do anything for it. Or in the past, they weren't able to.
Yeah, so I've heard about it actually being, I don't know about the cancer piece, I'll have to look into that, but about being like untreatable cuts within the linings of the lung that it's kind of leaves an irreversible damage to the lungs, but also like a chronic cough that can't be treated or takes a long time to go away. And obviously with abstinence or getting off of a substance for a while, you see progression, hopefully, but you never know how long it's going to take for these things to really have an irreversible impact, you know.
Especially
So,
if it's so young.
yeah, for sure. And their lungs are still growing, their whole body's still growing. So really just
Exactly.
having a serious impact early on can be really bad in the future.
So how do you determine outcomes? Like what do you define success in your role? Like, I know that's a weird question,
know.
but how do you quantify, like, I did this
Right.
or I measured this?
Well, I think that that's hard because when you're doing, you know, treatment or intervention or recovery, like, you know, someone not using a substance is usually a sign of success, and you can see that you've made an impact. And for us, it's going to be the long game, right? So
Yeah.
putting in that education and information now is hopefully preventing a generation of individuals from using, but we really have no way of telling that long-term goal until the long-term comes. But in the short term, we try to, you know, press our data against each other. So like our data from the past and how that looks against data today, and really getting all types of feedback, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, doing focus groups, but just getting the overall narrative to change is how we kind of drive where our success is.
Yeah, it's really hard to get statistics for our collective field because it's all self-reporting too. So, you know, it's based off the honesty of the individual, which, as we know, sometimes especially when it comes to this type of subject, they're not going to always be forthcoming because of the consequences at any age. So I see what but definitely by how you guys are doing it, focusing groups, like seeing how many people are becoming engaged, the involvement, how many times you guys can go, that's huge.
Yeah, and
I
just
know you guys
stories,
are
you know?
doing awesome stuff. Yeah, like I
just
know about
hearing
it.
People, talk about it, and just increased awareness. We had Kathy and Chris Sullivan come in not too long ago, and they're amazing. I know Taylor's Message has been on the show, but getting feedback from them about individual kids that reached out after the show and, you know, really stated that they made an impact on them or reached out to them with issues they're having and got that, you know, feedback. So those stories sometimes are what keep the cup full to keep going.
You know who she's working with right now is Becky Savage, our friend.
Yeah, that's
Love Becky, she's great.
yeah, she's great. You know, it's
I love her and
Yeah,
her
you
name.
guys just doing you can only do what you can do, right? You don't know how many people you help, but if you can help one, you can help two this day. You know, there's nothing. You know, you have to do what you have to do, and you know that's all we can do, right?
Right,
You know,
yeah.
if you just keep doing what you're doing the right thing, and that's important.
Yep, exactly.
What do you have coming up in the next?
Oh, wow.
Well, I know
Yes.
you're obviously. I don't know if you're doing anything over the summer.
Yeah, so we actually have an exciting conference coming up this summer. We're going to Nashville for
nice.
a conference.
Woo!
Yeah.
Smashville?
Yes, Nashville. Smashville, I suppose. And we're gonna
Appropriate.
Yep,
Appropriate.
exactly. We're gonna come on back from that, and we're going to a conference on adverse childhood experiences, the impact of trauma on learning.
Okay.
And then coming up in the fall, we're planning all summer really for our next year coming up with young people, but we really hope to do some focus groups with elementary aged parents to see what the parents want to see within the elementary schools, because we have this fear of going in and, you know, doing too much with elementary age youth and getting negative feedback from parents, but really seeing, you know, what would be appropriate and what can we do, because anything we can get to the younger grades is really going to be, I think, really important to the long-term prevention game.
Absolutely. I mean, if you just, I'm not a parent yet, but like if I wouldn't mind my child being educated if you're already getting
That's a scary
statistics.
thought, by the way.
But think about it, because I know with me having children, yeah, everyone watch out. But like, because if they're already reporting uses, honestly, in middle school, like that's not an appropriate time to do prevention. It has to be before the first time
Right.
that they're reporting there's a use.
Yeah, I agree, but you got to be careful.
Well,
too.
yeah, of
You know,
course.
like,
I'm not saying go in there and talk
I
about
don't know,
shooting
like
heroin,
I don't know
but-
what the age would be to go
Yeah.
in. Like I think about it sometimes. Like, what's the right age to talk about this stuff to kids?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I you know, would I want my 7-year-old, you know, sitting there listening about it, because I don't think he knows anything about it, but.
Yeah.
There might be that 7-year-old that might help too. You
Yeah,
know?
I think it's talking to the parents and really getting engaged on what
Yeah.
they feel is appropriate, and kind of working as a community, because at the end of the day, you know, there has to be some sort of conversation. It's just
Yeah.
figuring out what the content of that's
Yeah.
going to be, and having community members be part of that conversation would be ideal for us.
so,
Yeah, it's like you said, you talked about healthy body, healthy mind,
Yeah.
different coping skills,
Right.
stuff like that should be a part of curriculum in schools regardless. But it's the most beneficial, I would think, for young adults that are really resorting to using something to find something outside of themselves. I mean, there's studies now saying that this upcoming generations, including the one right behind mine, where technology has really impacted in a negative way their social skills and abilities. So they
Great
don't
point.
really know how to cope, right? So like I know how to cope to a certain degree computers like MySpace and stuff like that. Does anyone remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So when that came out, right? So like I was graduating high school when Facebook came out. So like and all those things, like it was not as much of a resource as it is today.
Right.
At all. Like we didn't have like a laptop. We had a desktop in the house that everyone used, and I would only be on it for like an hour a day because it was less interesting than anything else I could be doing. Nowadays, it's the most interesting thing in the household, which interferes with your ability to build a social life, which helps in turn feel with connections, relationships, coping skills, all these things. And these kids are like literally just without even noticing it, completely being disconnected from their communities.
So give your website address.
Yeah, so I'll give our social media address is really we're trying to push out the most information. So it's PYDC Plymouth on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. And our website is pydcplymouth.org, but we're hoping to do some renovations to that coming up. And then within our Facebook, we just shared recently, we've been working with an organization called Live Stories that takes data and turns them into kind of live stories,
that's
if you
cool.
would. Yeah, so it really creates a conversation out of the data points you have. So we just recently posted on Facebook our CTC data, Communities That Care data that we did with our 7th through 12th grade students. So there's some good information on there around marijuana use, alcohol use, and prescription pill use.
You're doing great work, my friend.
Trying
Really
to,
are.
yeah.
I know, you and Marielle.
Yes, she's the best.
Both rock stars.
Hey. All right. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks. It's
Always
great.
good to see you.
Likewise. All right. We'll be right back on Crosscheck.
1, 2, 3, 4. Boston, for Boston, we sing out refrain. For Boston, till wisdom's earth be fair. For here our waterhouse is true, and the towers on the heights wish the heavens are blue. For Boston, till the echoes ring again. For Boston, till the echoes ring again.
Welcome back to Crosscheck Radio. I'm Andy Bernstein here with Kevin Stevens,
2-time Stanley Cup winner.
2-time Stanley Cup winner, pride of
Pembroke.
and Alex Bezanson, the pride of Abington,
Okay.
founder of the Hug Foundation, and also
Abington Substance Awareness Coalition.
That's right. And joining us now is the Miracle Man, a good buddy of ours, friend of the show,
It's nice to be here.
Paulie V. You and Kev go way back.
Yeah, we go. Yeah, we go back a long time. So I think it's important. Like we've had a lot of celebrities, whatever. We have a lot of different people come in here and share their story. Paulie's pretty much one of the. There's a lot of people that listen and watch the show that are just that were normal people and people in recovery. So why don't you tell your story a little bit, Paulie, where you came from, what you're doing now, and how it's all going. In the shortest version, you can do it. And then,
Well, first of all, it's a miracle.
It's not a short version.
yeah.
It's a long story. It's a miracle I'm at the table here. And I'll just tell you, when I grew up, I'll say like Kevin's dreams were to be a hockey player, whatever. When I grew up, I wanted to travel and see people and meet people all around the world. And I became a flight attendant a year out of high school. And then I got laid off and ended up in the construction business in the 80s. So that's when the cocaine was rampant back then. And but my dream of traveling came to an end. And so I got caught up in the alcohol and cocaine 80s. And when I found out how powerful the disease of addiction was when both my parents, I'm from a family of 9, and both my parents got sick at the same time with cancer. And see, when I tell my story, a lot of times I relive it, and I don't like to tell it because I have the feelings. But I think it's important when I speak about my story that someone that hears a message that might have been in the same. When I tell it, it just comes across because it's painful. It's painful what disease of addiction did to me. So my parents were sick with cancer. My brothers and sisters all doing what they're supposed to do when your parents are sick, and I couldn't stop using. And then my mother died at 9 o'clock, and my father died 12 hours later. And it was a moment of truth for me how powerful the disease of addiction was. So I'll just tell you that I proceeded to get sober, and I was 2 years sober, and I ended up back in the airline industry. And so my dream was fulfilled. Once again, I got a second shot at traveling around the world, and I've worked for 5 airlines. So really highly trained on an airplane. You know, not many flight attendants work for that, are trained for so many airlines, but that's just the way it worked for me. So I'll just tell you, I've never been married. I don't have any kids. So in my mind back then, I didn't think that anything could rock me like my parents dying 12 hours apart. I just never thought that would happen. Well, there's a saying in the program that there will come a day with no power on this earth to keep you from a drink or a drug. So I was 10 years sober, flying for United, and my route was Boston to Los Angeles, and I came in off the flight, landed on 9/11, and I got off the airplane, and 5 of my friends got on it, and they were flight 175, and that hit the second tower, and so
That was really.
that was a day for me. I never did an opiate in my life, and I proceeded. I know I was in shock or whatever, and I was a physical flight attendant. I put people's bags away or whatever, and I was doing damage through the years of doing that. They told you not to do it, and I had back problems or whatever, and I got prescribed some pain medication and proceeded to go on a serious long-term opiate addiction on the airplane for 10 years, and then I came in contact with Kevin through. Mutual people, whatever, while you're doing that stuff. And I'll just tell you that what happened was Kevin at one point, struggling with this disease, Kevin let me stay with him. And
And the dogs.
And the dogs. I slept on his couch with his 2 dogs, thank God.
Yeah.
But what I experienced was, here I was caught up in this opiate addiction, couldn't believe it and couldn't get out of it. And I'm with Kevin, it was total insanity. So all of a sudden, Kevin's father passed away, and I was reliving it. So I remember saying to myself, please, let me come out of this. I knew he felt what I felt, and so that I'll go right to it. That since I made it back sober, since I've been sober, see, I know this show Kevin does an unbelievable job at this show about getting the message out to people before they make that mistake, and that's important to get these kids before they make that mistake. It's so important. I've been very, very lucky to be able to get the message to someone that's already in the midst of the disease, the midst of it. That's why they call me the Miracle Man. I don't know what it is.
You two were saying that you were like, can you believe we're doing this?
It's all about the way he can help people, because he goes and does what he's supposed to do, right? We all we all know how far we've come, man. It's we're lucky to be here. That's a given. We could have been gone, and for some reason God kept us around, right? Kept you around, kept me around. I do different things in different places. You go to meetings and you help a lot of people because you spread the message, and that's the biggest thing about this whole thing is this hope, right? We all went down and we all were way down. There's people out there are going to sit. There's all people hurting, but there's hope. There's always hope, and I think that's the biggest message that Paulie has too. Is he went down, he relapsed, he went down again, survived. Now he's living a good life. It's just, but it's a day at a time, right? That's it's one day at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, it's a miracle to me. It really, truly is. It really, really, truly is to come out of that, and to have the obsession gone. That's the miracle to me. So I think if anybody's listening or watching this, and they don't think it can happen to them, trust me, it can happen to you. It can happen to you. It's possible. And I think that's what's important is that guys like me and Kevin at our age had survived years of that opiate abuse. These young kids, it's important for us to tell them before they get to the point where, because a lot of people don't make it. We all hear it. A lot of people don't make it. We all know people that don't make it. And because if you continue on, your chances are jails, institutions, or death. That's the bottom line. And I know for me, when I tell my story, a lot of times when I tell the story, I don't want to get emotional, so I'll joke about some of the things that happened to me while I was using. And a lot of it's on the airplane. And I can joke with someone that understands the addiction, and we laugh about that stuff. But the reality is, it's insanity, total, absolute insanity. That as I stay sober, the longer I stay sober, and I think about it, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. that I was up 30,000 feet in the air doing drugs, you know what I mean? And telling passengers to pull down their window shades because I was smoke crack in the bathroom, you know what I mean? But I'm embarrassed to even say that here, but it's the truth. And it's just unbelievable that I survived it all, the years of it, back and forth across the country, all over the place. And the stories go on and on. So the message really isn't about what I did and how I did it. The message, you know, because Kevin was the top of his game, and it doesn't make a difference where you're coming from or whatever. It's absolute truth that if this thing gets a hold of you, you know, you're gonna end up not in a good place. We all know that. So now that me and Kevin are sober and people we know are sober, it's important to us to stop that. Because you know.
You have a great life now, right?
Life I couldn't be better. The fact that I get up in the morning and I have a chance at living, you know. I was around a lot of people that were dying at the end, and that was really devastating to me. People that were overdosing, and people from the 80s realized that wasn't going on in the 80s. Cocaine, people weren't dying like they are from the opiates, and all of a sudden I was in the middle of it, and I couldn't believe it. You know. I don't know. I just know that when so I'll go back to when Kevin's father passed away. So I really did pray that hopefully I could pull out of this thing to help this guy. That's what was in my mind, what was going on, you know what I mean? So then when I got sober and then Kevin got arrested, I knew that was the moment. I knew right then that was the moment to get a hold of him, because Kevin knew how I was. I used with Kevin. He knew how bad I was, and I just said, come, there's a way out, and that he trusted me. The fact that he could trust me to help, he didn't realize he helped me more than I helped him. And that's how it worked. In other words, another person that's been there can help somebody that's there. Like a judge couldn't tell me to stop. My parents couldn't tell me to stop. But strange people that I came in contact with that were down the same path as me affected me. Like, you know, so hopefully I'm affecting somebody with the miracle thing, because it truly is a miracle. If you've been where we've been, it's a miracle to come out of that. No question in my mind, it's an absolute miracle. It's a miracle to sit. I can't believe I'm sitting at this table right now. When we pulled up this morning, Kevin pulled up beside me, and I looked at him and I said, you know something, how many times did we sit in the parking lot waiting for a drug dealer? And we laughed about it. Me and him can laugh about that, but it's the truth. It's the truth. I mean, really, it's unbelievable what has changed in our lives. And it's important for us to do this. This is important.
I think it's important for older people like you guys that are in recovery to reach the younger people, because if the fentanyl and everything that's out there today was around when you guys, and it was starting, but if it was rampant like it is today, when you guys, you two want to be here.
That's right. That's
you know? So you guys were lucky that part of it wasn't there, but we don't want people to think, well, these guys are in their 50s, they survived, we can continue doing it. It's a different drug today.
Absolutely.
It's everything. We spoke about the marijuana being different, and the heroin's different. It's and they're cutting cocaine with the fentanyl now, so it's completely different than when you guys were doing it. You guys were lucky, you know, but the people coming up today aren't going to be as lucky if they start on this.
That's right.
So how are you maintaining your sobriety today? What are the things that you're doing?
Well, when I first got sober after my parents died, there was some old guys from South Boston that started an AA group in Quincy, and when my parents died that morning, I looked outside my parents' house, and these three guys were standing out in front of my parents' house that morning. That was May 15th, 1992. I'll never forget it. Now, none of these guys did drugs; they were just alcoholics. But they said things to me or whatever. I don't know what it was, but they connected with me, and they helped me turn my life around. So when I got sober this time, I was fortunate that the obsession was lifted. The miracle happened. It was lifted. I couldn't believe it. I struggled to get back here for years, but I know that I went right back to what these guys taught me to do, and which was get to a lot of meetings in early recovery. I needed to be around people that were just like me, that were doing the right thing, and let it penetrate, because I've learned in 4 years clean now how sick I really was. Each day I stay sober, I realize I'm baffled to think that I was that sick, and so the beginning stages for anybody is to be that's why they have treatment places. That's why they have detoxes. To be locked in an environment so you can't get at it because the drugs talk to you. They tell it's a tough thing. You need to be detox. Not everybody, but I'm just saying for myself, I need to be locked in an environment until I could physically, get to a meeting and get acquainted with people that were just like me, that would support me. There's so many people I wish I could remember all their names since I made it back here that were influential in my life, early recovery. Because I was mental. The way I explain it to people when I speak, there was like a ping pong ball in my head. It really, really, really was. And constantly. It was the only time that would slow down is if I sat in a meeting and focused on the speaker, and I would feel some relief. So I'd do like 3 meetings a day in early recovery. I had to do 3 meetings a day because it was. And then the miracle happened when that obsession was lifted. It was crazy to me. All of a sudden, this stopped. And I didn't want to use, but my body did. My body still wanted to use. That's the only way I can explain it. But when the obsession was lifted, now I know I can live.
And I think that's the biggest thing is, anybody that's doing recovery, it's, we all talk, it's time, right? We need time because, when you're out there doing this so long, sometimes, you think it's okay sometimes. You think, you know what? This is, it's bad. It's not, but this is what I do. This is how it's going to be. And until you get time, and like Paulie said, is hang around positive people that are going to help you, not people that are going to drag you down. Like that's the most important thing because, we're one bad decision away from not being here. That's right. All it takes. It's one day at a time. And if people are out there that are struggling, a battle in this thing, it's, it's about surrendering. You got to go in with 2 feet because it's going to be the hardest thing you do in your life, but it's going to be the most, it'd be the best thing you do in your life. I've done a lot of good things, but if I didn't have sobriety, I wouldn't have a purpose. If I didn't get this sobriety thing, what would life be for me?
That's right.
So, talking about the airline stuff, can you tell
some of the funny stories?
Please, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you when I realized. Well, one time I was in first class, and I had 2 drinks on a tray. And just took off out of Boston on our way to San Francisco, an hour into the flight. And I was standing up there holding 2 drinks on a tray, and that's the last thing I remember.
Right.
And then the next thing I remember, I feel and I just bounce, and I open my eyes, and I'm looking up at the 2 pilots, and I'm on the floor in the cockpit, and I'm like, what am I doing? We landed at 5 hours flight. They put me on the cockpit floor and laid me there, and. So the plane comes to the gate, and they didn't say nothing to me. I just got up and I walked off the plane. And I think the reason, I don't know. They called the doctor on the plane. He said I was breathing or whatever. But nobody said anything to me till the next day. And I made up some story. I took sleeping pills or something. I don't know. And
the shopping cart.
I always think of this because any opiate addict will know what it's like to be sick from that stuff if you don't have it. And I had to have it. The progression of it. I went for the pain medications, and of course I went into the heroin. And I was in Los Angeles, and I didn't have any, and I was looking for some, and I was in South Central LA in my flight attendant uniform, and it's about 95 degrees, and I'm probably about 130 pounds, and I'm pushing a shopping cart with a homeless woman in the cart because her feet were so swollen, and a Mexican boyfriend, staggering behind us with a jug, up and down the streets of South Central LA for 4 hours. 4 hours, up and down looking for heroin. And, because I had to work a flight out that night. And I don't know if people thought I had a costume on or what. But, that's, as I stay sober, the stories come back to me. That's one that's real vivid. But, the one about, I went back to my drug of choice on the airplane, and which was cocaine. And I was smoking cocaine in the bathroom. And, flight attendants would be asking me, why are you telling the passengers to bring the window shades down? And I get on the PA and I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, please leave, because I smoked crack in the bathroom, and I think the cops are going to come after me. You know what I mean? I know they're following us, and I'm pushing the beverage cart down the aisle, and, it was brutal. And
but you can laugh about it now.
But it's taken me 4 years to really say it, and people that aren't in recovery, that haven't experienced it, it was a hard thing for me to really admit that, because it's painful. the fact that I let my career go to that point, that, because I really took it serious. I know I was a good flight attendant. I saved a baby. I can tell you stories, a lot of stories. But the reason I tell those stories is because when someone's in a detox in despair, and I'm telling them, whatever, I want them to laugh too. I want them to, I want them to get a giggle out of something so they have a little hope that, this guy's crazy. He's smoking crack in an airplane, if he, whatever. But, and it seems to have worked, because I have a lot of people coming up to me and a lot of people calling me and a lot of people reaching out to me. And all I do is tell them the truth, what I did. So I think my story is a little bit unique because, I don't think many people get higher than I did. I was at 30,000 feet, you know what I mean? And I go to 300 miles, 600 miles an hour. So really, I really did survive some really close calls in different cities and bad scenes, really, really, really bad scenes. And
you were lucky you survived, not just from the drugs, but getting mugged, a knife, a shot.
Well, I got a lot of those stories. I almost got stabbed in San Francisco, and there was Phoenix.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
When you're in addiction, it doesn't matter where you go, you're going. That's the most important thing. It's full straight ahead. And it's kind of like, it's ugly, really ugly.
It's unbelievable, really, Kevin, isn't it, that your blinders are on to life? Because nothing
can happen to you.
No,
Nothing's going to happen
It's
to us.
unbelievable. It really, really, really is unbelievable how you can go. But it was, for me, it was what happened. The airline ended up sending me to treatment for post-traumatic stress. And what they should have done was drug test me. But, it was the 9/11 thing. And so I was, I was treated a lot with a lot of psychiatrists and stuff. They were doing all this stupid stuff in my head out in California and then in Florida. I didn't know. I just, I knew what the problem was, but I didn't know how to handle it. And they were trying, I don't know anything about post-traumatic stress. I figured you had to be a veteran or whatever. But I guess, I was in shock. And the opiates really did work for me. I was able to function on the airplane. And but it progressed like any addiction. It progresses, and it progresses, and years were going by. And every year the 9/11 would come up, and I would hear about the firemen, the policemen, and it would bother me. I would be burning up inside because I'd never hear about the flight attendants, and it bothered me. And so at the 10-year anniversary, I wanted to put on something to recognize these flight attendants who were going hand-to-hand combat on that airplane that we knew. And it put me over the edge, because it brought me right back to that day. And what happened, I pulled a box cutter out in a training class in Chicago. And if you don't know, that's what the terrorists used on the airplane. And that's what really brought it, it all came crashing down at that point. And that's when the recovery, the beginning stages of trying to stop this merry-go-round that was, at that point, was going for 10 years,
Question. First of all, thank you for coming on, as always.
You're welcome.
And tell us, if you could advise somebody out there, who's in the midst of addiction, if they're watching, what advice would you have? And also for somebody who's never used.
Okay, my advice for someone that's caught up in it is, if you're in it right now, you got to believe that what you're thinking isn't right, because you're not, whatever thinking, just don't trust your own thinking. You got to believe that someone else has better advice for you and take that advice. It might not feel right, but you're going to, you just have, the only way it's going to stop is if you stop. You can't, you can, we've all been through it. I'll just do a little bit, and years will go by, whatever. The bottom line is you need to be detoxed. You need to get off the stuff. So if you need help, you need to reach out to people that have been down that road, which is Kevin, me, or anybody. Call the show here and let people say, listen, I'm struggling with something. If you call here, we'll give you the advice.
We'll find a treatment place for you.
Absolutely.
Visit our website, powerforward25.com, contact us page, and we'll try to do our best to help you.
That's right.
Any way
That's
we
right.
can. And then for somebody who's not using,
Don't go. That's easy.
don't
use.
Yeah, don't start.
Don't go down the road.
No, absolutely not.
Road's
Absolutely
long.
not.
The road is long. All right. Well, on that note, that's our show for the week. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. Anytime.
We'll be back next week on Crosscheck.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.